Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Ahlulbayt live on Ahlulbayt TV, and we are having a special Remembrance Day for Jannatul Baqee, the graveyard in Medina, whose tombs were destroyed in 1925 by Ibn Saud, or the Saud family. And inshallah tonight we'll be talking about why it's important to remember what happened in Jannatul Baqee, why it's important to know who is buried there, and also to ask what we can do about the situation. As we know, there is widespread destruction of Islamic heritage, and inshallah tonight we'll be getting some practical points on what can be done. So my guests tonight are Sister Zahra Kazmi and also Brother Shabbar Mehdi, and finally Hani Al-Wardi as well. And inshallah we'll be getting their viewpoints. Please do also feel free to call in to voice your feelings about Jannatul Baqee and perhaps some ideas of what can be done in this day and age to try to rebuild what has been destroyed. Before we continue our discussion, we're just going to take a look at a short clip.
As a matter of fact, the Saudis do everything they can to destroy history. And what history are we talking about? We're talking about Islamic history. Usually, if one professes to adhere to a certain perspective, then why would you at the same time try to destroy that perspective? Unless you really do not believe in it and actually are an enemy to that belief system. And as we can see that despite the regime in Saudi Arabia saying that it is the protector of the religion, its goal is pure destruction of Islam and Islamic symbols. The regime in Saudi Arabia has destroyed the majority of structures that were existing from the early days of Islam. If we look at one of the main places that Christians want to visit, it is the city of Bethlehem. The reason is because they want to visit the place where they believe Jesus Christ was born, and also visit the many other religious sites there as well. It inspires them more regarding their religion, as they feel that they have come to the center and have connected with an important event from the past. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the messenger of Islam, is even not respected by the Saudis. How does the Wahhabi Salafi regime react towards him? They are razing the house where it is believed that he was born. History is being erased with the excuse of expanding sites to accommodate pilgrims in Medina, in Mecca, and throughout Saudi Arabia. The real reason for them to erase this history is because they want to erase real Islam. In the last 50 years alone, almost all of the historical sites in Mecca have been destroyed. And now, the Saudis say they even need to destroy the place where Prophet Muhammad was buried, and is over 1,000 years old, Masjid al-Nabi in Medina. They want to bulldoze it with the excuse of expansion. How can we allow this? Those behind this are the same ones that destroyed Baqi Cemetery and razed it to the ground in the past. This is the same regime that has no respect for Islamic values or Muslim lives. This is the same regime that in the name of Islam has supported those who destroyed the grave of a companion of the Prophet Hujr ibn Adi and stole his remains. It's the same regime that promotes Allahu Akbar being said while committing gruesome crimes. This regime has destroyed many mosques, both inside of Arabia as well as in Syria, Iraq, Bahrain, and wherever they could. Their goal is not expansion in the world of Islam, but destruction of Islam itself, the Islam that Prophet Muhammad brought to us. Muslims must be aware and stand up against this cancer that has invaded us. This cancer, Salafism, Wahhabism, must not be allowed to eat away the body of Islam. They must not be allowed to commit crime after crime in the name of Islam. They must not be allowed to change our historical symbols any longer. Enough blood on the hands of the Salafis, enough allowing them to hijack our slogan of God is the greatest, Allahu Akbar. Enough destruction. We must not allow the Salafis, the Wahhabis, to get away with their attempts to destroy Islam any longer. Our Ummah must awaken to what is really being done, and we must adhere only to the pure Islam of Prophet Muhammad, the one that he has brought us. Muslims, be aware of Wahhabi cancer amongst us.
So that was a short account of what has been going on, obviously, with the destruction of the shrines that has been going on for many centuries, in fact. And I will first of all turn to Brother Shabbar Mehdi, because again, one of the, first of all, Assalamu alaikum and welcome everyone. Assalamu alaikum. You know, obviously, one of the main reasons why all of these shrines are being bulldozed and destroyed is apparently, you know, because of narrations that say you can't build high graves, or you can't go and pray at graves, or you can't build structures over graves. So according to their fiqh, you know, this is the correct thing to do. You know, it's not Islamic to have these structures. So first of all, based on a fiqhi perspective, how can it be justified to have these marked graves and tombs? And, you know, and on that basis, therefore, we would be, you know, campaigning for them to be rebuilt.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Of course, that first question could take us up for the whole 1 hour and a half.
Right.
And I have come into the service of the channel more often than I think our other guests, so we'll give them time to speak,
Inshallah.
and of course, inshallah, mention. But just very briefly, the first thing to understand is that the concept of building on the graves and the what we call ta'arud, the differences of opinion between some ahadith saying that you cannot even have even a centimeter above the grave. For example, ahadith that many of these Wahhabi scholars use say that there shouldn't even be 1 centimeter above the grave, so completely till the ground. However, if you look at the books of fiqh, of the madhahib, of the Ahl Sunnah and the other schools of fiqh, openly they say, and we have all of I have them with me, inshallah, if we had time we could mention them. Openly they say that it is, for example, mustahab that at least 1 shibr, we call 1 handspan, above should be built. If you look at the life of the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, Jannatul Baqee, it was originally what we call Jannatul Baqee. Baqee means that place where a certain type of tree is found. We are told, we often say, Baqi'ul Gharqad. Gharqad was the type of tree found in that area. So when Uthman bin Mad'un, the first person to be buried there, when he passed away and it came to the time for his burial, the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wa alihi ordered all of these gharqad trees, these were thorny type of trees, to be cut for their space to be made so that Uthman bin Mad'un could be buried. Then we understand that the Prophet of Islam himself, according to riwayat from the books of our Sunni as well as our Shia ulama, mentioned that the Prophet of Islam took 2 large boulders. He placed one near the head of the grave of Uthman bin Mad'un and one near the feet, to signify where the grave was, and so that people could come and pay their respects. So this was another thing, another reason why he had done this. When we look at the destruction of Jannatul Baqee and the other shrines and the other masajid and the other holy sites that we have, this has been going on since the time of who? Just after the time of the Prophet of Islam. I'll give you 2 quick examples. The first was Yazid ibn Muawiyah. After Karbala, as we know, we have what we call Waqi'atul Harra. Waqi'atul Harra was what? When Yazid ibn Muawiyah sent many troops and a delegation, and they destroyed 3 of the 4 walls of the Kaaba. So this is nothing new. Also, these 2 stones that we saw on the grave of Uthman bin Mad'un, Muawiyah during his time had ordered the governor of Medina, Marwan ibn Hakam, to remove both of these boulders. So during that time, they already were not happy with simple 2 rocks on the grave. When this took place, we are told, historians tell us, there was such an outcry by the companions of the Holy Prophet of Islam and the Tabi'un, those that had seen the companions, as to why what the Prophet had placed, they were removing. Out of such protests, Muawiyah realized I will have to put them back. So they were then replaced back onto the grave of Uthman bin Mad'un. So this whole idea and ideology of destroying the graves and having nothing on the graves has been from the time of Muawiyah and Abu Sufyan and the Khulafa of Islam.
Okay.
With regards to your question about the actual fiqh point of view and proofs, the proofs are open in Quran. Ashabul Kahf, for example, what was mentioned about Ashabul Kahf, that لَنَتَّخِذَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ مَسْجِدًا. What should we do with the Ashabul Kahf? We know that they are here. We know that they are sleeping. We know their state. Either we build on them a masjid, or the Quran says we build upon them an edifice. قَالُوا ابْنُوا عَلَيْهِمْ بُنْيَانًا. The Quran mentions that the people said with regards to where Ashabul Kahf are, either we build an edifice or a masjid. When the Quran mentioned this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say that both of these were incorrect.
Yeah.
Allah allowed this statement to be in the Quran without objection, i'tiraf, meaning that the concept of building upon shrines and building upon graves is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there was an issue here, Allah would have mentioned that do not build upon. But He said that people decided to build a mosque over Ashabul Kahf. Therefore, there is no problem in that. You then have many other Quranic verses. The most important or the most often used is وَمَن يُعَذِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَأَنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. Whoever reveres the sha'air, the symbols of Allah, this is a sign of the piety of their hearts. Right. What do we mean by sign? We mean the signs of Allah's religion. The prophets, the awliya, the shuhada, the martyrs, all are signs of Allah's religion. We are told to respect these signs.
Okay.
Here, let me quickly mention, then we can try and discuss other issues. Islam will give us the foundations. We then act upon that. Islam will tell us, for example, this type of meat is halal, this type of meat is haram. It will not tell us then how to cook my meat. I can cook in whichever way I want, with regards to culture. In the same way, Islam says respect the signs of Allah, the symbols of Allah. Allah has not told us directly how we should do this. Of course, within the lines of Sharia. One of the ways within which these symbols of God, the prophets, the awliya, the anbiya, the ashab are respected is by building over their graves. And the proofs are, of course, many, but these are just some of the proofs mentioned.
Thank you. Thanks very much. That's a good start, you know, before we sort of take the discussion, because again, you know, because this is always one of the questions that comes up. This is actually at the sort of the basis of what's going on, you know, ostensibly. So, Sister Zahra Kazmi, you're working for Save Muslim Heritage. Can you tell us again? I mean, people have appeared on here talking about it, but again, just for any viewers who may be new to watching the programme, when was this started and what's happening now with regard to Jannatul Baqee?
We started, Save Muslim Heritage was initiated after the attack on desecration of Hujr ibn Adi's grave in Syria in May 2013. We were looking at what leadership were doing. There was a lot of cry from the general public about what we could take, what steps we could take forward. And just a group of us, a few members, we decided that actually while we're living here, we can't physically go and protect those shrines, and this potentially could be an ongoing trend that obviously we've seen in Saudi Arabia that now has spread into Syria. We also have the Holy Shrine of Sayyidah Zainab there, and ongoing threats that were being made continuously against her shrine. So we thought if we don't start raising our voices and start influencing policy and decision makers, our silence will cost us hugely. And obviously, as you mentioned in the introduction, that people had raised the petition, they've lobbied at the time when the graves in Baqi were destroyed. But I think in the modern times, not much has been. We've kind of just been complacent that this is going on, and we're really looking for others to do the work. And our campaign is really looking at strategy to say we're grassroots, we're speaking for the people, and we need to lobby people that we can. And in this country, it is the politicians, it's socially, it's our religious leaders, because obviously at leadership level, they are in contact with UNESCO, with MPs, and really if we don't have the backing as a community and in unity we don't speak up, then how long are we going to stay silent? And what will we say to the future generations? That we remained quiet? You know, in my lifetime, what we could have visited in Saudi Arabia, we can no longer visit, and the trend is continuing. Obviously now we're hearing about what's happening in Iraq, and we need to do something.
Thank you, and inshallah we'll be continuing keen to talk more about that, about how, again, how people can join, and just to remind our viewers as well, if you have any views on Jannatul Baqee, do feel free to call in. What are your feelings about the destruction of the graves, the destruction of the tombs of the sacred personalities in the Muslim world, and inshallah, more importantly, what can we do about it? So Brother Hani, could you give a little bit of a background, your background again for our viewers?
The background of the event?
Of yourself. And,
of myself. Well, I'm an analyst, and I have a, so I work in the media as a media consultant, and I also work in the financial services.
Right.
And I've been involved in quite a few sort of political and social campaigns. So that's my background.
Okay. And again, just to, this comes around again every time. This specific date when these particular graves were destroyed by the Saud family. Now, again, when I converted to Islam, and I went for Hajj 11 and a half years ago, and I went with a group, from the other schools of thought, and we went to Medina, and I remember standing outside Jannatul Baqee, but not being told anything about it. So all I knew was that was 11 years ago. You weren't allowed to go in. Apparently there were some important people in there. I didn't know who they were. Weren't told who they were. So you actually go all the way there. You make your Hajj. You got to Medina, but you don't actually learn the significance of Jannatul Baqee. And probably my experience was not atypical. Probably many people will have gone there and said, well, we don't know what's in there, but okay, apparently we're meant to visit it for some reason. So who again, just a reminder of who is buried in there. Why is it important to talk about?
Well, communities or societies have shaped their identities as time goes by. One of the key factors for societies to maintain and preserve their identity is their history and their heritage. Certain societies help to preserve their heritage by creating mythical, unrealistic, unreal figures to try to preserve this. So that's why we have, for example, we're in Britain, so we hear about the novels created by Shakespeare and trying to portray a certain personality about people. Now, we as Muslims, we have a rich heritage of real individuals who existed, who lived in there, who could be a role model, and who have actually changed the path of history in their times. One of the key objectives of removing these sort of graves or these sort of symbols of Ahlulbayt in Jannatul Baqee and other places is exactly that: is to remove this from the sort of the fabric of the belief. Because then when you go there and when you see that there is this person, you'll ask, who was he? And when you ask who was he, you will be told, for example, this is Hassan ibn Ali. And when you say, who is Hassan ibn Ali? They tell you his mother is Fatima and his father is Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's grandson of Rasulullah, and he fought, for example, Muawiyah. Who is the next? And how did he die? He died poisoned. And then you ask about, so who is next? For example, you hear about Imam Sajjad, who witnessed the issue of Karbala, the entire event of Karbala. And then when people start asking questions, and as the reality sort of becomes clearer, that's definitely not what the what those transgressors or those sort of unjust, unfair, corrupt rulers want to hear. So one of the key things is to remove this from the identity of Islam. And in fact, it's very similar to someone who sort of who has an ID card or a passport or something. They could be a very noble, important person, but if without their ID card, without their passport, they're just they nobody. They're just a human being, simply without any recognition. Someone could be a PhD or a professor or something. Without their certificate, they are just a normal person. These symbols or these locations for us Muslims, or for the Shia specifically, they are part of our identity. The problem the problem that we have with removal of these places is, like I said, it's an attack on the concept that they represent, And also it's taken away our identity. You know, 100 years later, if we have, if you know, they decide to, as a report says, they probably decide to demolish the Masjid al-Nabi, the mosque of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And as the brother here mentioned, that Yazid, you know, used, he burnt and demolished part of the Kaaba.
Yeah.
Well, who says, you know, they wouldn't demolish the entire Kaaba? And then 100 years later, you don't know where is Kaaba, we don't know where is Rasulullah, we don't know. We probably won't even talk about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So these are the very key important things, and I think what has happened is that this is not as much as Al Saud, but as the Wahhabi, Salafi, perverted view of Islam. And in fact, you know, they don't need to go too far to see if it's haram or halal to build over graves, because Kaaba is built, you know, sort of underneath Kaaba, directly underneath Kaaba. There's nobody, and yet we go and do Hajj around Kaaba. Next to the Kaaba, there are narrations that are hundreds or even thousands of prophets buried under Kaaba.
True.
Leave these two alone. How about Hajar al-Aswad? Hajar al-Aswad, all Muslims, when they go to Hajj, every Muslim, nobody denies that. That is one of the most important rituals or most important acts or practices when you go to Hajj, is despite all the hardships and the difficulties and the challenges, to get to the Hajar al-Aswad, you must go and touch Hajar al-Aswad. Touch Hajar al-Aswad. You're not meant to, if you get, you know, water from Zamzam, then they would say, well, there's got some benefit for you. If you go to Hajar al-Aswad, you're just touching Hajar al-Aswad and kissing Hajar al-Aswad, which is a stone, and nobody's buried directly under Hajar al-Aswad. So these are very important signs and very clear evidence that you know, takes away any any room for discussions about whether it's fiqh, it's possible or not possible, or clear or unclear.
Thank you. Well, we've just got a couple of minutes till we go to break, but again, inshallah, I mean, another point as you make, we know now, I mean, it's been in the news many times that whoever it is, the ulama there, because of course they're different from the family. I mean, the ruling family tend to let that was the agreement, isn't it? So it's the ulama, in a sense, who want to change the culture, and there has been talk of indeed like destroying, you know, the grave of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family.
So Al Saud are the furthest away from being religious, and there are lots of stories and pictures and clear sort of evidence that they are not religious at all. The key thing is there's a marriage of convenience between Al Saud and Wahhabis. So Wahhabis get to, you know, implement their perverted view of Islam in one of the key objectives to actually damage Islam internally, exactly like all Munafiq. إذا رأيتهم تعجبك أجسامهم وإن يقولوا تسمع لقولهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about hypocrites, Munafiqeen, says if you see them, you will like them, because what they talk about, they talk about Tawheed, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, preserving Islam. إذا رأيتهم تعجبك أجسامهم وإن يقولوا تسمع لقولهم كأنهم خشب مسندة يحسبون كل صيحة عليهم. So that when you see them, Munafiqeen, you will like them, but actually they are as useless as the wood that is used to be burnt for heating or for cooking. So basically, this is what exactly the Wahhabis are doing. They get their way in terms of their perverted view of Islam to damage Islam, and Al Saud allow them to do that while they rule the country. So it's a bit of a marriage of convenience.
What's interesting is, I mean, I heard again with regard to, you know, Medina, for example, they wanted to paint the dome over the tomb of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, silver. But in fact, the people of Medina protested. So, I mean, we're going to go to break now, and inshallah we'll continue our discussion. But it's interesting to see that not everybody in Saudi Arabia is agreeing with what's going on either. We're just about to go to break, and inshallah we'll be back in a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Ahlulbayt Live, where we're talking about the situation of Jannatul Baqee and what can be done about this situation as well for the future. Of course, everybody, may be feeling a little bit helpless, but also do feel free to call in with any of your thoughts or your protests on what is going on. As we know, a protest took place yesterday in London against what is happening, and the least we can do is to at least say something. I used to be a bit skeptical about protests, but I think, well, at least you're getting your voice heard. I mean, even if perhaps, it may take many years for the pressure to build up, it's better to say something than not to say anything. But before we continue with our discussion, we're just going to take a little look at some of the work that Save Muslim Heritage has been doing.
When we say Save Muslim Heritage, we are not asking, we are not requesting. It is an order. It is an order upon us from Allah, and is an order upon us to ourselves and onto each other. We have to save Muslim heritage.
The sacredness of the place does not come from the stones, does not come from the beauty, the artistic creativity, does not come from the architecture. It comes from the encounter between humanity and divinity. Because of that, nobody, and I insist and I repeat, nobody has the right to touch or hurt or harm this encounter.
For some, only with death comes peace. For others, their tribulations even then do not cease. By God we are from Him, and to Him we shall return. From that fate we do not choose to turn, but forgive me. Is a resting place too much to ask?
So when we're looking at Muslim heritage, Muslim history, Muslim sites, Muslims' blessings, it's not just for one Muslim, it's for every single Muslim. Male, female, young, old. There's no distinction. The Prophet came for everyone, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Kaaba is actually for, not just for Muslims, it's for mankind. Inna awwala baytin wudi'a lin-nas lalladhi bi Bakkata mubarakan wa hudan lil-alamin. It's for the whole world, the Kaaba, for guidance. And what is the Kaaba? It's bricks and cement, but Allah's made that a guidance for mankind. So heritage is not just something that we can just look and point. It's actually has a very deep significance, a very deep spirituality.
Freedom of speech is rife, but to talk of this is banned. We see destructions of the memories of those that stood strong against any evil doing and wrong. We see graves robbed and shrines desecrated, the manifestation of such hatred.
And these people who are buried there, from the Prophet of God to the 11th Imam, to the awliya of Allah, what are they? They're a connection between alam and mulk and malakut. They're a connection between the material and the immaterial realm. They bring together all of the realms onto one location. If you want to feel the pleasures of all of reality, then go towards that. And what happens? They fill you up. So the minute that you walk out of there, you find that that void that you had, that pain that you had, that depression you were suffering from is gone. It's beneficial for you as individuals, and it's beneficial for all of us as a society. So really, do something about it. Do something for your own sake. You're not doing this for Save Muslim Heritage. You're not doing this for your children even. Essentially, when you do something, you do it for yourself. So that on the Day of Judgment, you can say to Jannatul Zahra alayhi salam, we preserved your father's monument and we preserved your children's monument.
So that was a sample of some of the work that Save Muslim Heritage has been doing, and inshallah we will talk about that with Sister Zahra Kazmi. But first of all, we have Brother Hussein Sajjad Hussein on the line, and he's called in to express his view. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Sister Rebecca, and to all the dear guests on Ahlulbayt TV this evening. Thank you very much indeed for bringing this very important show into our homes, and most of us have already benefited from the wonderful sermons or points mentioned by the brothers and the dear sister. And I think we need to commend the efforts of Save Muslim Heritage. We've just seen a wonderful promo video there. which I think one thing that strikes me the most is that we included not only the voices of the Shia brothers, but there was a Sunni brother, I understand as well, who voiced his concern about the plight of the destruction of the sites of our holy personalities. And I just wanted to ask a question to the respected brother Shabbar Mehdi. Most of us, especially in uni, when we have discussions or debates with our fellow Sunni brothers, or indeed the Wahhabis as well, the response they give when it comes to issues such as this one is, at times you question yourself, is it really worth it to engage in a dialogue with these guys? Because the answers they give can sometimes baffle you, and you think there's no point in entering into a discussion. So one of the most common replies that we normally get is that the stick which perhaps an old person walks with or to stand on is more important than the grave of the Holy Prophet. I'm sure many of you perhaps would have already listened to this argument before. And when someone gives you that answer, you question yourself, is this person actually engageable in a dialogue, if that makes sense? And how does one respond to such individuals? And I think more importantly is that one requires a lot of patience when it comes to engaging in discussion, engaging in dialogue, engaging in debate. And I wanted to ask again this question to the dear brother Shabbar Mehdi. At what point does one actually say or give up and say, I'm not going to answer or ask anything more to this brother, because the answers they come back with are so fickle, which makes you think there is no point in discussing any further. So I just wanted to ask these couple of questions to the brother. I hope I've made sense in the little short time that I've asked my question.
Definitely. That's a good question, which makes me kind of feel tired just thinking about it. All those years, when you come up against answers that just shut down discussion, and you can't engage. I mean, it's very difficult. I think partly because that school of thought, in a sense, prohibits thinking. So we can't really call it a school of thought, but that school or madhab, frowns upon thinking. There's very much an emphasis on just,
As in they are calling, sorry to interrupt, bila kayf, without looking at how.
Yeah, good. Yes. So this means that if it's very difficult to reason, with someone. I mean, I've tried over the years, and in a very tentative way as well. So you try to reason, or you have a conversation, but they're so programmed. These people are so programmed to kind of be suspicious of thinking, be suspicious of questions, and to basically shut down discussion, that it's very difficult to engage, really. So as Hussein said, should there come a point where you just you walk away?
The Quran says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikma wal maw'izati al hasana." How do you spread this true path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Number one, with hikmah and wisdom. And of course, it is the responsibility of us, as the brother had said, in universities where there is discussion that takes place at the workplace, in these different areas, with hikmah and wisdom. وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ. What is the usloob? What is the way within which I represent myself in a way in which the Ahlulbayt alayhim wasalam would deal with other people, would talk to other people. In other words, sometimes, yes, you have people, no matter what you tell them, they will come as the replies that they give. They say that it is mentioned in one of the books of Sayyid Muhammad Tijani Samawi, the great scholar, the author of the book Then I Was Guided, and the Shia Ahlul Sunnah and others, how he debated with a Wahhabi about this very issue of the graves and worshipping the graves. And he said to that individual, Sister Zahra Salamullahi alayha, she went and visited the grave of the Prophet of Islam every single day, number one. Number two, the Khalif for them at the time, they had seen this, that she is visiting the grave of the Prophet of Islam every single day. And Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, who is the fourth Khalif for the Sunni Muslims, he had built her a house in Baqi.
Yes.
The Khalif of the Muslims,
which is still there.
A companion of the Holy Prophet of Islam. So he says, I brought this in front of this Wahhabi scholar, that look, the daughter of the Prophet of Islam, this is her sunnah. He said, no, those things were only acceptable for Fatima.
Right.
In other words, she can do what she wants, but what she does, we don't have to follow. That was only for her.
Right.
And he says, I was bringing arguments and he was giving me the most, randomest type of answers that didn't even make sense. That was just jargon or jumping from here and there. The Quran also says, and I'll be frank here, وَإِذَا خَاتَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When you're unfortunately talking to someone who is ignorant, there are different types of ignorance, of course. One is called Jahilul Murakkab. Jahilul Murakkab, the ignorant person that doesn't know he is ignorant.
Right.
This is called the compound ignorant individual. If you have individuals, whatever you tell them, they give you replies which make no sense, and you feel like you are knocking against the door again and again. What do? Salama. So sometimes the response is what? Lakum dinukum. I have tried. Sometimes the person you are debating with, yes, he is able to engage. That's a different story, but inshallah we can take the call and then.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. We've just got a call on the line which we're going to take now. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sister.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
To your panel as well.
Welcome. Thank you.
Rebecca, there is one thing which I think we are missing out in everything. You see, Saudi Arabia, which is Hijaz really.
Yeah.
This was given to them by some bigger power. Now, if you see, there are how many thousands of the armed forces, American armed forces, are stationed in Saudi Arabia. And if you go back and listen to what Bush had said, that they are attacking our values, as if Muslims have no values at all.
Yeah.
Nobody has got values, it is only the Western values. If one really heard him over and over again, and try to ponder over it, we can understand what he was trying to say. Saudi Arabia is nothing. A smallest country would finish them within 24 hours.
Yeah.
This is whatever they are preaching, the Wahhabism came in existence through what? You see, now we have to go deep into it. Because Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabis have got nothing. They are the puppets. To be honest about it, I don't think they've got any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
These are all planned. To be honest about it, they are planning this bit by bit by bit. And the time may come that they will destroy Kaaba as well, and say, why do you want to? God is everywhere. How can you really justify that God has got a cubic place where it is his home? So I think psychologically, if you go to see, they are putting so much into this mind. And I think, to be honest about it, if you take the history of America, America is an occupied country of somebody. They slaughtered people. They have killed. They wiped out the whole local population. Where are they? Israel is doing the same thing. They've got the same history. If you see, they are occupiers and these are occupiers.
Thank you.
In reality, I think the British, unfortunately, we are the British, and
we will talk about that. We will talk about that. Thank you. Sorry, we've got another call waiting on the line, but we've taken your point on board, and inshallah we will talk about that in the last part of the program. We've just got another caller on the line, so we'll take this. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. My name's Hussein. I'm calling from Birmingham.
Welcome. Thank you for calling in.
I'd like to describe myself just as a simple Muslim, and the reason for say that, the concerns you're raising in your community, it's the same concerns that many Muslims have, and we're really worried with what's going on. These graves are obviously of significant historical importance, especially for future generations. We need to preserve them so that when we take our children to the sites, they understand the context and the sacrifices that were made for Islam and the word of God through the Messenger and the Sahaba Ikram and the Ahlulbayt to get to us. And this, I think, needs not just to be discussed with respect just in your community, but I think you will find similarities, the same compassion in in other communities as well that are also Muslim. So, you know, this is a cause that, you know, rather than being divisive, we can all unite. It's a shame, you know, as a Muslim today, when I was discussing with somebody who wasn't a non-Muslim as what's going on with Gaza, and you know, there's this concern by the Muslim Council of Britain saying that we should have people from Gaza, children coming and being treated here. Well, they were saying, well, why aren't you taking them to your Muslim countries? You know, why are they coming here? And you know, we're embarrassed to say that that is what we should be doing. You know, as Muslims, we should be supporting our brothers and sisters, and not only that, we should be preserving Islam. But it seems like, you know, as we're increasing in numbers as Muslims, you know, the Islam is getting, instead of stronger, it's getting weaker.
Thank you very much for calling in. That reminds me of a narration where the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, said that there will come a day when the Muslims will be, you know, as numerous as grains of sand, you know, on the beach. But obviously there are lots of narrations about how the community is going to be weakened. We've just got 3 minutes before we go to break, but I think as the caller made a good point, I'm going to talk about Britain and the wider picture, inshallah, afterwards. But the good point that the caller made just now about you know, the remembering the sacrifices that were made for Islam. And for me, this is something that is important to honor and give respect to those who were the founders of Islam. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for their sacrifice. I mean, Brother Hani, this is again one reason, if you agree, the issue of sacrifice. You know, remembering what they did. If you don't remember who they are, then you're not honoring them.
These personalities are the pillars of our religion, are the pillars of our belief. Demolishing them is an attempt to demolish the whole belief. So absolutely, their sacrifices were the key factor that helped preserve Islam. Ali ibn Abi Talib, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, brought, when as a messenger of Allah, when Islam was initially established, you know, at the end of the day, it's Imam Ali and Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein and all the companions who've been, at the end of the day, they carried out the message of Rasulullah and preserved the true Islam to us to this date. The key thing here that we really need to focus is that if this has happened, you know, if it was against Imam Hassan or Imam Sajjal or Al-Baqir or Al-Sadiq in Al-Baqi', we know that there are, we mentioned this when we were on the break, there are other individuals, there are other great individuals who are in Al-Baqi'. There's, you know, numerous amount of companions, including the first one, which the brother mentioned here, Uthman ibn Mad'un, who was the first one to be buried in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
And it's Uthman ibn Mad'un that Imam Ali alayhi salam named his son after Uthman.
There are Sahaba, there is two aunts of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. There are those you know, daughters, it's a debated issue, but those who, the daughters of Khadija's sister, or those who were raised in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's house. There's al-Banin who is buried there. There are, you know, hundreds of Sahaba buried, because when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam started to bury Uthman ibn Mad'un in there, it became a sunnah to be buried there.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have to go to break. It's Adhan time here in London, and we will be breaking for 10 minutes. So inshallah, we will see you again at 9:05, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Ahlulbayt, live on Ahlulbayt TV, and taqabbalallah to everyone who has just prayed. And we are talking about Jannatul Baqee and what we can actually do, inshallah, about what is happening with the destruction of Islamic heritage. Again, before we continue our discussion, we have another short clip for you to see.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الذين غلبوا على أمرهم لا نتخذن عليهم مسجدا
So that was obviously pictures of Jannatul Baqee, the photographs, and also obviously a timeline of its history as well. And just before, well, we're going to, inshallah, in this part of the show for about the last 15 minutes talking about what we can actually do. But I'm just going to ask again, Brother Shabbar, Mehdi, about what is the benefit of visiting graves. In fact, even in, I think it's Bukhari, it says the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, said, there's a narration that says, before I asked you not to visit the graves, now I ask you to visit them to remind you of death, to remind you of the shortness of life.
This is the exact philosophy that many people use. And this hadith is, of course, that when we believe in what we call nasakh, or abrogation of a ruling,
right,
according to Bukhari and Muslim and these sources, the Prophet of Islam had said, according to them, that first I told you not to visit the graves, but then I saw that there was a benefit, so I advise you to visit the graves. What was the benefit? As you said, the remembering of death. Yeah. Of course, this is present. If you don't know where the graves are, if you are unable to go to the graveyard, the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to Aisha, who mentions, as mentioned in Sahih Muslim, Bukhari, Nisai, all of these books, he had gone in the middle of the night on the order of Jibreel to Baqi, and he stayed there for a long time.
Yeah.
If you go today, sometimes they will allow you to enter, but they will say the Prophet of Islam would go very quickly. Oh. He would just say, Assalamu alaikum ya Ahlulbayt, and inshallah I will be with you soon. And that's it, he would go. No, the ahadith say he stayed there. Aisha says, I saw him 3 times looking to the sky and praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive all of them. And he stayed there for a long time, then he returned. So of course death is there. Very quickly we also understand that if, for example, I visited one of the shrines of the martyrs, of the shuhada, and I see his shrine and the amount of respect that is there, that they have built a shrine over his grave. Yeah. Number one, will that not increase my faith that this person has done this for my religion?
Yeah.
If there was nothing there and I saw weeds growing around that person's grave, would I not think, what kind of religion is this? What kind of people are these, that the person that gave his blood for this religion we don't respect? Exactly. So when I see the great shrine and the beautiful masajid and the dhari and the edifices, this also brings me closer to Allah. I understand the reason why that person died for Islam. Also, there is a rule with regards to aql. We have something called wajib shari, wajib with regards to the sharia, that salah is wajib. Yeah. We have something called wajib aqli. Logically, this is wajib. I'm walking across a lake, I see someone drowning. Yeah. Logically, it's wajib for me to go and save that person. We say, وَالشُّكْرُ الْمُنْعِمْ wajib. Someone who has given me something, it is wajib for me to then visiting their graves and respecting them. And building, the least we can do, as the Quran says, to build over a masjid or an edifice. This
is. I mean, I mentioned it in previous programs. You know, the confusion again in the Wahhabi school of thought between respect and worship. So, you know, there's a kind of suspicion of just giving respect to people who sacrifice their lives, and that's confused with worship. But to move on to what we can again actually do, Sister Zahra, I mean, again, we may feel that there's very little we could do. Huge amounts of money are going into the destruction of Islamic heritage. And I think even some of the experts say something like 95% of it now is wiped out. So what can we do from today to?
Well, when you think about that figure, 95% in Saudi Arabia, it's astounding to think what has been destroyed. And do we want the remainder in the Middle East, in Muslim countries, to be destroyed as well? And that's why, again, our campaign has a strategy. It's pioneered a strategy for everyone to do something, so we don't feel helplessness. When we can't do anything, I think, bar going physically there to protect the shrines. I think there is quite a lot we can do here, and we must do. It's our responsibility to ensure that we voice our condemnation, whether it's at our grassroots level and whether it's at leadership level. So our grassroots campaign is trying to merge the voice of the people that perhaps haven't got something to go to leadership and say directly. So we're collating those voices. We're collaborating with other organisations as well, because the whole unity aspect, or you can say in certainly within our religion, whether you're Shia, Sunni, people are opposing this desecration, to come together. And in both of our conferences from last year and this year, we've emphasised on the need that we need to speak up for other people that are oppressed in our lands, whether they are they're secular or whether they're Christian minorities. It's our interest to preserve all heritage. Heritage belongs to humanity. So for Save Muslim Heritage Actions, the bare minimum anybody can do is to go to our website, savemuslimheritage.org.uk, and sign up to our database, where we can then go and present our numbers and say, actually, our numbers on Facebook, again, for Save Muslim Heritage, and we can go to leadership and say, we've got thousands of followers, because this is an issue that is actually affecting all of us. We are all concerned, and it is at your level that you need to do something. And now, in terms of leadership, we're also liaising with them. We're liaising with Christians, Sunni, Shia, and I don't think there's any decent human being and Muslims that are not concerned about this. Everybody I have spoken to are concerned, and this is something we need to do. So in terms of leadership, there's a lot of work going on, and it doesn't get trickled down. So we're trying to act as the go-between. So I've met with, members of parliament. We've gone to, our leaders have also got contact with UNESCO heads, with the General Secretary of, of the UN as well. And there's lots going on behind the scenes. And hopefully, if we can get to a point where, desecrating a sacred shrine or of somebody, a person of God becomes a war crime, I think we've done a fantastic job collectively, and we can't do that individually. We need to come together, and we need to build our coalition. So, and again, people can sign up. They can go to their MPs. We've got letters already drafted. Go and visit your members of parliament who have a duty to represent your views. They've got links to the Foreign Office. Let's all come together, and if we come together in thousands, I really think it's going to be difficult to ignore our voices. And we've seen, as one of the callers mentioned, Gaza. There has been such a tremendous campaign promoting, and at the end, we're not going to be able to, let's hope they get their land back. But let's say that at least we've voiced our opinions and we've said this isn't acceptable on a humanitarian basis. So equally, we have that responsibility.
So again, people can just go to your website, Save Muslim Heritage, online, and they can get all the information there.
Absolutely.
Brother Hani, again, a caller was calling in earlier saying that we need to target the bigger picture in a way, kind of remind ourselves of why these particular people are in power, how they got in power, and perhaps target, or address those who are supporting them. Is it realistic to do that? Do we have a hope of taking a stand against this, coalition, we could say, of forces that is bringing about the destruction of the
Allah
heritage?
subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Sometimes there are small groups that can win over a large group, and we've seen many examples in history and in modern days. So yes, absolutely we do have a hope, and our greatest hope is the hope that everyone believes in, is a saviour at the end of the day. But we can do a lot, like the sister mentioned. So to give some specific action points that people can do today, with what we have at our disposal, specifically those who are in the West, where you have the social media. Every one of us can create a page on Facebook or an account on Twitter to particularly focus on one of these issues that are important. So, for example, one of the key or the most important, events or topics that needs to be covered is the destruction of Baqi'. We saw what the Wahhabi ISIS did in Iraq. They targeted Nabi Yunus, Prophet Yunus. They targeted Nabi Sheeth, Seth. These are Anbiya before even Islam. And these are believed in, everyone believes in them, whether you're a Muslim from different denominations or you're not a Muslim. And the sister mentioned an important point here, which is this is a human heritage. We have universities in the UK who are 200, 300, 400 years old, and they are considered human heritage. We have houses that probably belong to nobody, but they were built 150 years back. And there's a restriction on changing them and changing their layout here in the UK, and the same in the US, and the same in many other countries in the European, in the West generally, and in those countries who respect their heritage and respect their history. So, action points. We have the social media, and for those who use the social media, you need to be more active in using the social media. It's probably, it's fun to talk about, football and talk about your daily habits and food and stuff. But if you have an important topic like Jannatul Baqee, then do spend some time in paying attention to that. Write to the media. It's fine. Just express your opinion. Just send an email to the BBC or to the CNN or to Sky and say, look, I believe that there is something important has happened 90 years ago. I believe that you guys should go and cover it. Just send a very simple, 2 sentences to your media. Your MPs, your representatives, your members of parliament are normal people. They're very, very normal people. Just
some of them.
Yes, as in normal as in they're like us. There's nothing scary about them. And they have to listen to you. As a taxpayer, as a Muslim taxpayer, they have a responsibility to listen to you. They represent you. Okay, fair enough. You probably didn't vote for them or you didn't vote at all. And I'm hoping people start to go and vote as well, of course. But they have a responsibility to listen to you. They have weekly or bi-weekly surgeries where it's open to people and you can book an appointment and go and see them. And you don't have to say much. Go to your MP, go to your local representative, go to your council and say, look, I live in this area. I have a concern about a human heritage. The human heritage that is 1400 years old. I have a concern that there is damage. We all know what Taliban did and Al-Qaeda did to Afghanistan, Buddha statues, and everybody talked about it. It's our responsibility to go and speak. So social media, use that actively and focus on something like Al-Baqi', Facebook and Twitter. Create a group on WhatsApp and try to help out with your friend. Imam Hussein and Ashura teaches us a lot. When people get together, 5-6 people, they can provide food for 500. This is very similar. This is as important as that. Defending Imam al-Hassan, the elder brother of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, is no less than Ashura. Go to your MP and see them. Write to your MP. A very simple email. It's just an email. It doesn't cost you much. It's probably 5 minutes from your time. A simple statement. It doesn't have to be. If you have a template, like the sister mentioned, ideal. If you don't have a template, just say, I am concerned about a human heritage issue, which is Al-Baqi', now in so-called Saudi Arabia and Medina. I would like you to voice my concern. Contact media, like I said, directly. Join organizations such as Save Muslim Heritage or any other organization that have any concern about heritage or history. Just join them. In fact, join political parties if you can. And then try to influence the political parties from inside and say, this is a concern that we have. There are organizations whose sole existence is to campaign. So there are organizations that campaign for peace, for example. There are organizations that campaign for human rights. Go and join those campaigns. Learn how to run a campaign and run your own campaign. So this is one organization here. We should have about 150 organizations. There's one Facebook page. We should have 3,000 Facebook pages. If you can create a website, create a website. If you can write a blog just telling your emotions or just collecting some information about Baqi', then just write a piece of blog. At this day, we have so much at our disposal that sitting idle and just, not saying much and being silent is very close to a crime, actually. Because we have a responsibility to do something. You don't have to do all of that, but you can do some of it.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. And we've just got 3 minutes, but again, you made it again an interesting point. All the interesting points go on behind the scenes, you see, or more interesting points about how, again, I mean, it should be noted that quite interestingly, the grave of Ibn Taymiyyah is still standing. Very high, marble structure, carefully surrounded by a fence with some little green leaves in it. So what's happening about the grave of Ibn Taymiyyah? Why is that still standing? The mausoleum of Bukhari, that is still standing. How come that's not being targeted? And you were mentioning how other...
So Khalid ibn al-Walid, the very well-known so-called companion, is buried in Syria. And there's a masjid next to his supposed grave. Yet when the ISIS people, the Wahhabi ISIS people, controlled the area, they did not touch it. You mentioned Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah, the founder of Wahhabi sect. They actually, after Abdul Wahhab, who created the Wahhabi sect based on Ibn Taymiyyah's, opinions and ideas and perverted version of Islam. So if anything, these are more, they should be demolished first
But
they would probably even want.
And that goes back to our point, which are the places that are being targeted have a history, have a story, have a message to tell. We are asked by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to go and visit Imam Hussein as much as possible. There's a reason for that, because that helps us remember standing up against oppression, standing up for the oppressed. And the Jannatul Baqee, the companions who are buried there, most of them are killed by unjust rulers, by dictators, by again, perverted version of Islam. There is a message, there is a story behind it. So when we rebuild Baqi', we also rebuild all that history that comes with it to stand against oppression. So it's very important to note that we must do whatever we can, whatever is at our disposal to help, even by a picture or a word or a comment that you can make.
Thank you very much, everyone, for an excellent discussion. And inshallah, we pray that inshallah, we'll be able to continue to highlight these points. And thank you again to everyone for your calls as well. And inshallah, we'll be back soon. Assalamu alaikum.